Because I'm a long-term thinker and focused mainly on the long-term health of the American economy and the global economy too, I get a little nervous when I hear people in positions of official power saying that some kind of a China deal is close at hand. And the reason is, it makes me think that they're more concerned about making a deal for its own sake than about the actual content of that deal and its repercussions down the road.
Alan, there's some suggestions last hour when we spoke about this with Mr. Pillsbury, Michael Pillsbury, that China could end up buying a lot more U.S. imports. That figure, a $1 trillion figure, has been floated out there. The president campaigned on closing the bilateral trade deficit with China. Would you consider that, from your long-term point of view, a positive sign, even if they end up just buying more of our soybeans and less from Brazil, for example? Is that the kind of progress that you'd be satisfied with?
I'd be satisfied with that up to a point, but the big question that I would raise is, what would that deal do about the fundamental, or I shouldn't say fundamentally different, but somewhat different strategic issues, the technology issues? What would that do about the Made in China 2025 program, which is, of course, China's effort to use every lever of power that the Chinese government has to ensure domination of high-tech industries on a worldwide basis? I don't see where China buying more American imports, especially if they're low-value goods, if they're largely commodities and even fuels, I don't see where that does anything to solve that broader strategic / tech war problem. And we're not only in a so-called trade war with China, we're in a tech war that has big national security implications.
So, David, I'll go to you on that. If we don't resolve any of those harder issues, frankly, but ones that American companies and now the American public is really aware of, can we still come away claiming victory, even if we do get movement on the trade deficit?
Sure, you can absolutely just declare victory and go home. We've seen that many times. And it's somewhat hypocritical of the U.S. to say that they're against countries having industrial policies, having seen that in Germany, having implemented that in Japan, having supported that in Korea. The U.S. has a long history with supporting development of industrial policy. I realize that this is a scary time for the U.S., but the Chinese are not going to compromise on their industrial policy. Their demographics are demanding it. They need to upgrade the value add in their manufacturing. And they have to stop importing screens and sensors and things, putting them together and then sending them as whole iPhones to the United States and getting penalized for the full value of that product. They are not going to compromise on Made in China 2025 and is on a collision course with MAGA in the United States.
Well, Alan, David says, among other things, that because Chinese reform is, because of that they're not going to back down on 2025. The administration should squarely decide to initiate a major U.S. disengagement from the Chinese economy and, I guess, regard China as an adversarial presence on the world stage, both in terms of national security and economics. David, I want to get your reaction to that, and then, Alan, have you explain what you mean by that.
Okay.
I think that's absolutely right. I think the United States needs to protect its own interests. We're not in a position to disengage from China today, the second largest economy in the world, on which we're incredibly codependent in terms of manufacturing and credit and all kinds of different things. So we're not in a position to disengage, but we should be very wary of their medium-term and long-term goals, which are very China first, the same way that the United States administration has been very America first. They're simply not going to roll over. They see this as existential for them to be able to upgrade the quality of their manufacturing at home.
So friends, enemies, frenemies, Alan, what are we?
We're certainly adversaries, and it's high time U.S. policy recognized that. And I think that that's been one of President Trump's major accomplishments. Where I would fault him, and I think this is a very serious problem, he's come nowhere close to explaining the full stakes to the American people, and especially letting them know that, as David just implied, any kind of significant disengagement is not going to be easy. Trade wars, to quote President Trump, are not easy to win, and they're especially not easy to win with such a large economy with which we are so thoroughly intertwined. But the effort, as I see it, has to be made, and the president has to do a much better job of convincing the American people that whatever short-term sacrifices and costs need to be made are eminently worth it and, in fact, essential.